Good morning to everybody. Sorry for this. Computer took so long to start. They make their own decisions, so we have to obey. And you have here two handouts, one on a handout on Sarvastivada Buddhism, which we will be going to read in the afternoon. The other one is what I prepared as schedule for this research methodology course, so you can get an idea what we are going to cover in research methodology and what we have already covered. So in Nagarjuna Mulamadhyamik Karika analysis, I will be looking at today first short chapter on Kala Pariksha, examination of time. And then after that we will be moving to discuss Tathagata Pariksha. I hope you have got both handouts. Kala Pariksha is very interesting. Actually, I thought I will discuss this with you because this is another very good example of Nagarjuna's, the way Nagarjuna handles certain concepts. For example, Kala is an interesting abstract concept, and then we will see how Nagarjuna is dealing with that. We will begin with the one, and then Pratyutpanno Nagatascha Yadyatitang Apekshahi Pratyutpanno Nagatascha Khalotite Bhavishyati. If the present and the future are dependent on the past, then the present and the future time will be in the past. Now, this whole issue being discussed is what is Kala. So when we talk about Kala or time, we usually talk about past, present and future. But interestingly, when we talk about the present, if we are talking about the present moment, when we talk about it, present moment is gone, right? And then future, by definition, has not come yet. Ultimately, what remains is the past. So we can talk about the past as something gone, but of course, when it is gone, it becomes past, and then unlike present and future, in a way we can talk about the past more solid sense. But anyhow, we talked about the past, present and future. And then we consider Kala to be existing really. Now in the Buddhist philosophy and also particularly in the Abhidharma, that Kala is considered to be a Panyati. Kala is also a convention, concept. Here Nagarjuna argues if the present and future are dependent on the past. So if you cannot, you talk about the present with reference to the past and also future with reference to the past. So if the present and future are dependent on the past, then the present and future time will be in the past. So if they are dependent on past, then of course you have to say that they are in the past. Simple argument is because with reference to past, if we define present and future, then Nagarjuna says, so the present and future will be in the past. Then in the second one, Pratyutpanno Nagatascha Nastas Tatra Punaryadi Pratyutpanno Nagatascha Syatam Katam Apekshatam. On the other hand, if the present and future do not exist in the past, then how can they exist depending on the past? So how can they exist dependent on the past? So if they do not exist, either you have to believe that present and future exist in the past, or you have to believe that present and future does not exist in the past. So in the second stanza it says, if you believe that present and future do not exist in the past, then of course the question is, how can they exist dependent on the past? Because whenever you say present, future, you are talking about dependent concepts. But in a way you can talk about the past. But then if you look at carefully, you can see that all three concepts are interdependent. But basically, present and future, for the reasons I said earlier, future has not come yet. The present is a moment that eludes you, because the moment you say present, it's gone. So particularly if you look at the moments, then the present moment is always gone. But we can talk about the presence or present in a much larger sense, like, okay, in the course of a day or something. But otherwise, if you just take the present moment you cannot catch. So ultimately, Nagarjuna is trying to show how the concept we are using so comfortably has a lot of philosophical problems, right? So usually we don't question these things. We just accept. We think that the time exists. But of course, when you look at, so number one says, if the present and future are dependent on the past, then the present and future time will be in the past. On the other hand, if the present and future do not exist in the past, then how can they exist dependent on the past? So usually present and future are defined with reference to past. So then how can they exist dependent on the past? Anapeksh punarsiddhing natitam vidyate tayoh pratyutpanno nagatascha tasmat kalona vidyate. Further, the existence of those present and future, the existence of those present and future is not seen without depending on the past. Therefore, the present and future time is not seen. Pratyutpanno nagatascha tasmat kalona vidyate. So, because the existence of the present and future is not seen without depending on the past, therefore he concludes that present and future time is not seen. Navidyate. So you can't see pratyutpanno anagatascha. What is this? Further, the existence of those is not seen without depending on the past. Therefore, the present and the future time is not seen. And then, in this same manner should be known the rest of the two times, past and present, with reference to future, and the future and past with reference to the present, high, middle and low, and oneness and the like. Now you see, with reference to past, Nagarjuna want to say that present and future doesn't exist. And then with reference to present and future, Nagarjuna want to say that past doesn't exist. With reference to the past and present, Nagarjuna want to show that future doesn't exist. Ultimately what happens is, all three times are interdependent. Now because all three times are interdependent, ultimately the conclusion is no time is independent. No time is unrelatively existing. In other words, without reference to other two times, you cannot explain about rest of the two times. So dependence is depending on each and everything. So then what happens is, how can you really talk about any particular thing? So so you talk about past, present and future. So now with reference to when you talk about the past, the first what he did was, with reference to past, Nagarjuna wanted to show that, these two things exist, so depending on, something like that. This same relationship goes for other things also. You put present here and then past and future. You put future here, then past and present. So ultimately when things are completely dependent on each other, so it goes like this, it goes like this, So, completely interconnected web of things. So ultimately the whole conclusion is, how can you talk about the time as something independently existing, Now, as you know, there is a lot of philosophical discussion from the very ancient time about time, right? What is the existence? So whether there is something called time absolutely. Now, Abhidharma tradition has been always that time is a concept. Time is, some kind of convention we have adopted. And both Eastern and Western philosophies, you find these things. According to Kant, time and space, he thought that we are attributing from our mind. In order to understand any kind of experience, he said that we have certain a priori concepts. So time, he said, time is such a concept. So whenever we want to understand something, we understand it in the context of time and space. Now, where do we get time and space? According to Kant, we get these things from our, the internal structure, really. So that is the part of that we are attributing to our experience. So according to him, through our senses, we get information. But of course, the sensory information we put into this time and space framework and we understand. So in other words, we attribute time and space. So here Nagarjuna is basically having this argument based on dependence. So if you take the Pratitya Samutpada, nothing has independent existence. So if that is the case, then you cannot talk about past without present and future, future without present and past, present you cannot talk about future and the past. So all are dependently arisen. And then he says, in the same manner, should be known the rest of the two times, past and present. And also he talks about Uttama, Adama, Madhyama. If you take this category, Uttama, Adama, Madhyama, high, middle and low. Again, high cannot exist without low, low cannot exist without high, and then the middle cannot exist high and low. So if you take these concepts, you can see that again, these categories are also interdependent. Uttama, Adama, Madhyamadi, Anekatvadinsh lakshate, Ekatvadinsh. Uttama, Adama, Madhyamadin, Ekatvadinsh. Ekatva. Now, if we say ekatva and nanatva, oneness and manyness, the opposite of oneness is manyness. So, if you take oneness and manyness, again, both depend on each other. You can't talk about oneness without manyness. You can't talk about manyness without oneness. Now, ekatva, nanatva. Now, these are metaphysical characterizations believed by philosophers. So you talk about sometimes whether the universe is one or universe is many, whether there is only one principle, whether there is many. Now, people have been debating about, philosophers have been debating about these things. So when you talk about the oneness, you talk about universe as one particular thing, and from that, everything is emanating or something. Something like that, or universe to be many. But what Nagarjuna want to show is ultimately neither oneness nor manyness can really be, existing truly, because these things are dependently arisen. So That's Nagarjuna's conclusion. So therefore, high, middle and low, oneness and the like means oneness and manyness. All these things exist dependently. Number 5, Nastito grhyate kalah, astitah kalo na vidyate. Te grhyate ta grhitascha kalo prajnaptate katham. Very interesting argument. The non-static time is not understood. Na astito kalo grhyate. Astitah kalo na vidyate. Static time is not seen. Even if one were to understand the time, not understood, how can one communicate it? Non-static time is not understood. Nastito grhyate kala. I mean, you cannot understand the concept of time as non-static. Static means permanent, non-static. So, na astito kalah gruhyate. Astitah kalah na vidyate. And then on the other hand, you cannot see a kala without moving. So, moving kala you cannot understand. Not moving kala also you cannot see. So, here the situation is kala is always running. So, not running, non-static means running kala. Time is not understood. As I said earlier, past is gone, future has not come. But when you say present, the present moment you can't catch, because the moment you say present moment, it is gone. So in that sense, asthita kala, non-static time, moving time, in other words, you cannot understand. And then, sthito kalo navidyate, static time is not seen. You don't see, you can't stop the kala. You can't stop, the time passing. So then, of course, you don't see something called static kala. Now, then the third question is, even if one were to understand the time not understood, so time cannot be understood. But even if one can understand it, how can one communicate? Kalo prajnaptate katham. How can you communicate it? How can you prajnaptate means show it to somebody? Now there are two things. One thing is the problem of understanding. The other thing is problem of communication. Even if you understand, how can you communicate? Now, Nagarjuna there talks about the very problematic situation of talking about kala without reference to these concepts. So it is, according to him, you cannot make anyone else understand it. You cannot communicate it. So, on the one hand, you don't see time stopped, and on the other hand, if you take time as running time you can never understand. Okay? Now, I think somebody can say, look, when the time goes to the past, we can understand, because ultimately from past it doesn't go anywhere. But then what happens is, time goes to the past means it is over, it's finished. Right? I mean, something to be existing in the past is, as far as each one of us are concerned, our past is only a memory. Now, if our memory is not there, then we can't talk about our past. Okay? So, now in that sense, we cannot talk about past. Although past is ultimately future becomes present and present becomes past, then you can't talk about the past. But there's interesting question you can ask. Now in Buddhism, we are talking about the past karma, past actions. And then we are talking about the future results. Now what are these things? If we can't talk about the past, we think that whatever we did in the past, we are getting the results. And then whatever we are doing now, we will be getting results in the future. So when we particularly talk about the karma, about punarbhava, we are talking about the concept of kala, based on the kala. Karma and karma vipaka is based on kala. So can we understand Nagarjuna as denying all these things? I mean, that is a question for you to think. Final one, bhavang pratitya kalaschet kalo bhavadrate katah nacha kaschana bhavosti kuta kalo bhavishyati. If time exists dependent on bhava, how can time be there in the absence of bhava? Now in our earlier discussions, Nagarjuna showed that there is no bhava, abhava, parabhava, swabhava. In that chapter we saw that. So the bhava we cannot prove. Bhava doesn't exist. Now if time depends on bhava, how can time be there in the absence of bhava? There is no any bhava. Nacha kaschana bhavosti. There is no any bhava. Kuta kalo bhavishyati. So how can there be time? Now, all these things, arguments ultimately show that unreality of time. So the final argument is, if you take concept of bhava. Now, bhava means really the being. So the basic idea is bhava. Actually, bhava means being. Also, we can say existence. Bhava. So, if bhava is not there, how can we talk about time? What is the meaning of this question? If being is not there, how can we talk about the time? If being is not there, if existence is not there, how can we talk about time? Now, actually, the concept of being is interesting. How to understand that is, when we talk about anything existing, like we can say chair exists, tree exists, the building exists, we exist. Now, this existence as abstract concept is given as bhava or being. So being means in other words, we can say the basic concept of existence of everything. I think European philosopher called Martin Heidegger has a book called Being and Nothingness. This is Sartre. I'm kind of mixing up. But anyhow, being. So the people have written, volumes on being. But I think being has to be understood as a primordial concept, like being of everything. So when we say chair exists, table exists, human beings exist, we are talking about some kind of being of or existence of something. So in that sense, it is a very basic concept. So the word used in Nagarjuna is bhava. Now in earlier chapter, we saw that bhava is not seen. If bhava is not seen, abhava is not seen. Bhava, abhava is not there, parabhava not seen. Parabhava is not seen, then swabhava is not there. So, Nagarjuna got rid of all these things in the previous argument. So, based on these things, here Nagarjuna says, Bhavang pratitya kalaschet kalo bhavadvrute yatah. If bhava dependent on bhava, kala exists, kalo bhavadvrute yatah. In the absence of bhava, how can you talk about the kala? Nata kaschana bhavosti. There is no any bhava. Kuta kalo bhavishyati. Then how can there be time? Now in these six stanzas, Nagarjuna seemed to be, rejecting the concept of kala. Okay, so what do you think about this? Something happened to my computer. I don't know. My cursor is not working. Okay. Do you have this chapter with you? Okay. And so you can see from the beginning, Pratyutpanno in the present and in the future, Nagarjuna gets rid of the concept of present, depending on the argument is dependent on past if the present and future exist. Same argument is applicable to all three times, because all three times are dependent on each other. And then number 3, Nagarjuna says, existence of those present and future is not seen without past. Therefore, the present and future time is not seen. So then he says, in the same manner you can deal with other two times, and also high, middle, low, and oneness and manyness, and these things. And then finally we have static kala and moving kala. He says, when kala moves, moving kala you cannot understand. And then static kala, unmoving kala, you don't find. So then he further says that even if you understand that, how can you communicate it to anybody else? That's a problem of, not only problem of knowledge, but also problem of communication. Sometimes we get certain knowledge, but how do we make others understood it? So that's the problem. Final conclusion is, if time exists dependent on bhava, how can there be time in the absence of bhava? Because there is no bhava to be seen. So then, if time exists on bhava, how can there be time without bhava? There is no bhava, how can there be time? So conclusion is, nahi kaschana bhavosti, therefore, kuto kalo bhavishyati, how can there be time? What do you think about this? What do you get out of this? Now basically, time is a concept we don't question very much, right? Because it is a part of our experience. We spend 2 hours here, or we spend a couple of hours there. So, we always block the time, and that's how we understand. And when you don't have the concept of time, the behavior can be very different. Now, usually our behavior is governed by time, right? So we have a sense of time. So by about 10:30 you become hungry. That is not necessarily because you need food, but you have been conditioned to that time framework, because we are dependent on existence of time. So we have shaped our behavior in that manner. But suppose we are in a situation where there is no time, in the sense different atmosphere, no clock, no way to know the time, life will be different. Actually, there are some modern research that have been conducted on that. I saw one experiment where a volunteer went into kind of underground room, completely cut off from everybody. And so there are some records like that. I am sure it must have been a very difficult experience. But of course, for this particular experiment, she could communicate with the outside with the computer. So she had a computer, but apart from that, no time and no external world. She was just underground, specially made room. And then I think the report, I read it long time ago, you are losing sense of time. You really don't know, then what is your sleeping time, what is your eating time, all these things really, don't exist for you. Then, what will happen to the human beings? So there are some experiments, some researchers done on this, but basically that is not very easy thing for people to cope with, right? In the absence of sense of time. And our existence, very existence is associated with that. I remember Nelson Mandela saying when he was in the prison, of course, long time, he was imprisoned and, cannot see the outside world. Then he says something very interesting. He says that we must never lose the sense of time. Because if you lose the sense of time, according to him, at some point you stop existing. Then, even if you are given freedom, you are completely disoriented. Your mind is gone. So he says that therefore it is very important when you are in that type of situation to be conscious of the time, dates. Okay? So, this is the basic situation of us. But on the other hand, what Nagarjuna shows us is the philosophical aspect of that. Particularly the Nagarjuna's basic argument is relativity, relativeness. So we talk about time, past, present and future, but according to Nagarjuna, these things don't exist independently. But does that mean that Nagarjuna rejects time completely? I think that's an important thing to think. As I said earlier, now if we believe in karma and rebirth, we are in a kind of mentality where we think that, we will be born again, and then, the things we did in the past are going to affect us. We are living with those assumptions, right? So how can you really live without those things? Now, if you really reject the concept of time, then I think you have to reject all these things. But I think Nagarjuna is not rejecting time. Nagarjuna is rejecting time as absolute things, right? But dependent time, Nagarjuna cannot reject because, the dependently things can exist and then you can accept them. But if you take independent time, the past without reference to the present and future, present without reference to the past and future, cannot exist. Actually, very terms, when we say past, we anticipate the present and future. So in that sense, time is... so I think the correct way to understand Nagarjuna will be to say that dependently arisen time, Nagarjuna accepts. But independently existing time, like anything else. Now, if we take that way, not only time, Nagarjuna will not accept anything that is independently existing. In one place, Nagarjuna says, Apratitya samutpanno dharma kaschit na vidyate. There is no any dharma that is not arisen independent. So everything is arisen dependently. Apratitya samutpanno dharma kaschit na vidyate. Apratitya samutpanna. Independently arisen dharma is not seen. Yasmat tasma Dashunyopi dharma kaschit na vidyate. Therefore, there is also no dharma which is not empty. So, in other words, all the dharmas are dependently arisen, therefore all the dharmas are empty, shunya. So, that also shows, in what sense Nagarjuna is using the concept of shunyata. So, but anyhow, if we apply this same principle here, what Nagarjuna says is, independently existing time is not available. Therefore, not empty, non-empty, ashunya, time is also not available. But time as dependently existing and time as empty, Nagarjuna doesn't have a problem. So, in other words, the conclusion is Nagarjuna rejects the concept of absolute time. But then that argument is not only for time, for everything. Nothing can exist, not only time. But why does Nagarjuna discuss time specifically? Because time is a concept that we take for granted. We usually never question, because we assume time, right? I mean, people don't question these things. People don't have a problem with them. But then on the other hand, if you really look at carefully, ultimately what is time? The experience of time can be a very interesting thing. I think you should read on this. This philosopher who recently died from Cambridge, philosopher, very well known. He has a very famous book called The Short History of Time. What is that? Stephen Hawking. So Stephen Hawking's one of the most well-known book is The Short History of Time. So the topic itself is very interesting, history of time. So, the analyzing the concept of time, because we usually take it for granted. But then things we take it for granted when we think about them. Now Buddha says that in the Dhammapada, Digha Jagarato Ratti. If you cannot sleep, night is very long. But if you sleep, you don't know what happened during past 8 hours you were sleeping. It's like, it's a blank, right? It's not part of your experience like. So if you sleep 8 hours, you don't know what happened in the 8 hours. You really don't spend 8 hours. But then on the other hand, if you don't sleep, then of course every minute you feel that, it is very long. So in other words, Diga Jagarato Ratti. So the experience of time can be very different. In this kind of lecture, 2 hours can be like 4 hours. Or 8 hours. But if you are watching a movie or something, 2 hours is nothing. So the experience of time is, something dependent on the person. Now, if absolute time is there, that can't be. Because my experience of time is not as your experience of time. So ultimately, experience of time is relative. Right? If I don't like the movie, 2 hours is a very long time for me. So that's my experience. If you like the movie, 2 hours is just nothing. So the way we experience time, and then very often we forget about time and, we do our things. So if it is absolute time, then there cannot be a difference in the way we experience. You and I must be experiencing the same time. But of course, times are different. And then I think this concept is not new to Buddhism. And we also believe that there are certain divine worlds. 100 years of earth is like 1 day for them. Right? Their life is so long. So 100 years in the human being is 1 day for them. But then on the other hand, like the experience of time. Now, if there are such gods, and if you ask them, how do they feel about the time? Would they say that it's a very long thing? No. But on the other hand, we don't need to go to the divine world. You take a mosquito. Mosquito lives only in 2 weeks, right? How about us? So if you compare, so the mosquito would be thinking like, okay, human beings, 1 year is like they are 1,000 years or something, right? Because mosquito lives such short period. But if you look at the mosquitoes, like beginning, it goes. A dog lives 15 years, right? But then again, dog becomes young, puppy, and then young, adult, and then old. Within 15 years, the dog is dead. So what is the experience of time? So from the dog's point of view, human beings' time is so long. Okay? So, we don't need to go to heaven. I mean, even on earth, we can feel that, time experience can be very different. So ultimately, what is time is the very important question. So, I don't think you can reject time or you can live without the sense of time, because everything then loses significance. But on the other hand, if you understand this relative sense of time, then of course it becomes completely different, right? What else?
I think when we say time, it means there's something beginning and end. If there's no end, so we cannot say the time.
Yes, but end means we usually set up blocks. Now we say from 8 to 10 we have a class. Then by 10 we are over. But then does that mean that time is over? No, because we have the concept of end of time because we have this time slot. But if we didn't have that, then there is no end. So the concept of end always defined by us, right? Always defined by us. The way we define it, way we block it. If you don't block it, then there is no, such thing as that.
In the Buddhism, time is just conventional or magnetic.
Yes.
It's not real. It's not reality. It just exists depend on the Phava.
Actually, the other argument is want to say that if time exists on the Bhava, if Bhava doesn't exist, then there is no time. Now, there Nagarjuna is rejecting the absolute time, concept of absolute time, independent time. Because Bhava is independent, so then therefore independent time. But of course, time as convention is not rejected really. I don't think time as a convention is rejected. But, when you think about it, if you don't think, of course, we don't see the complexity of that. But when we start thinking about it, we can see that this is a very, very complex issue. Like, suppose human beings who can think did not exist, then would have been their time? We can say, okay, things would have existed. So in that sense, things would have arisen and existed and then perished, even if we did not know it. So, but then, whether is it long time short time, good time, bad time. What are these things? I mean, we define time, right, in that sense. But then my question is, if we didn't exist, then what will be? Can we talk about time then? There is no one to talk about time. But does that mean that if all human beings are gone, the time will be over and the world will be over? No. Right? Even in the absence of human beings, there can be trees and plants and rivers and all that. We can talk about them existing. And then forget about human world. We know about other stars and other planets and the universe. Right? So, I think the point is, ultimately time makes sense insofar as it affects our life. Because if you look at the universe as really a very widespread thing, all these conventional things lose importance. We can't think that this is the only place where people like us are born. I mean, in different types of situations, like, we are on this earth and, we have the body in certain shape and all that. But, there can be other places with different bodies to suit those places. The beings must be existing. We don't know really, because universe is such a complex thing. So, but then can we say that in those places the time doesn't exist? I mean, there are certain things, of course, I don't understand. Many of us do not understand. They say that if you start going in a vehicle with the speed of light, to go to the nearest star, they say it will take 4 light years. Right? 4 light years. But after 4 light years, when that person reaches the next star, what of his people on the earth? Generations must have gone. So, but how about that person? I mean, for him, time did not exist like. So after traveling at the speed of light for more than, around 4 years, when he reaches that star, Earth must have gone 1,000 years. But then if that person were to live in the Earth, of course he will not be living 1,000 years. But then what happened in between? Anyway, these are unnecessary thoughts. But but anyhow, good to think about, because when you say time is panyati, time is ultimately a part of our experience. I'm not sure. I mean, my thinking, I can see that time can be our personal experience. But then even if we are not around, then what will happen to the time, we really don't know. Because the time today is our calculation and our, the construction. But if we are not there to construct time like this, then what will happen? So the things would have still existing. So Nagarjuna's conclusion, without going into that much into detail, it seems like the Nagarjuna's methodology, as I said to you, everywhere it is the same. So if you understand a methodology, now the same methodology applied to time here. So ultimately, bhava is defined as atma, something that doesn't change, something that exists independently, right? Now, you can see the argument. So in a way, you cannot talk about anything existing without being, without some kind of existence. But Nagarjuna says that, on the other hand, bhava as unchanging thing doesn't exist. So if time exists on bhava, then you cannot talk about bhava. However, Nagarjuna's conclusion is, if you ask from Nagarjuna, don't you believe in time? Then time does not exist. Nagarjuna would say, no, it does not mean that time does not exist. It means that time doesn't exist as an independent thing. But as a dependent thing, time can exist and everything else also can exist. Right? I know it can be a little bit too much in the early morning, so why don't we take a break? Okay, we will take 5 minutes break. Okay, we will start the chapter on Tathagata, Tathagata Pariksha. The Tathagata here means the Buddha, the enlightened one, Tathagata. Also in the discourses, the word Tathagata is used to refer to not only to the Buddha, but also to an Arahant. And according to some instances, the word Tathagata also has been used to refer to being or Satta. But basically in this chapter, I don't think we need to worry about that, because in this chapter, Tathagata is basically the Buddha. So Nagarjuna starts with looking at how to define Tathagata. Who is Tathagata? Now he says, Skandha nananya skandebhyo nasmin skandha nateshu sah. Tathagata skandhavan katamotra Tathagata. Question is, katamotra Tathagata. Then who is the Tathagata? Now he says, skandhas are not Tathagata. He is not other than skandhas. Skandhas are not in Tathagata. He is not in them. Tathagata is not with skandhas. Tathagata skandhavan. Then who is the Tathagata? Now you can see skandha means panchakhanda, rupa vedana sanya sankhara vijnana. So skandhas are not Tathagata. He is not other than skandhas. So on the one hand, Tathagata is not skandha, but on the other hand, you cannot say that Tathagata is without skandha. So on the one hand, skandhas are not Tathagata, but Tathagata is not other than skandhas. Then skandhas are not in Tathagata, and Tathagata is not in skandhas. Then the fifth one is Tathagata is not with skandhas. He is also not with skandhas. Now if you take these all positions, you can see that the two concepts on the one hand, we have the concept of Tathagata, and then we have the concept of Skandha. Okay? Now, the idea is that you can have Tathagata and Skandha. Because when you talk about the Tathagata, what you talk about is the Panchaskandha. I mean, you talk about the person, right? Now, actually, the argument used here, you can see that not only about the Tathagata, these arguments can be used according to Nagarjuna for any person. For any person, right? Because now if you say that you are looking at the Buddha, you are talking about the 5 skandhas, right? Same argument you can put into if you are seeing the person called X, what you really see is the 5 skandhas. So ultimately when we are talking about somebody, we are talking about the combination of 5 skandhas. Then the question is, what is the connection here? Now again, simply, very simple manner, entire argument depends on if you consider Tathagata as one, Skandha as another, then of course you are in trouble, right? Because the moment you take Tathagata is independent and skandhas are independent, then you cannot establish this connection. Because if you think that Tathagata can exist as Swabhava, skandha can exist as Swabhava, then what? If everything can exist as Swabhava, then nothing needs anything else. So the Tathagata can exist without Skanda, the Skanda can exist without Tathagata. So then, you can't talk about anything beyond that. So in order to present this situation, Nagarjuna says, Tathagata is not in Skanda. What this means is, then you assume that there are two things. So this person called Tathagata is in Skanda. It's like, saying, we can say the pen is in the jar. So we have a pen, we have a jar, and then we say pen is in the jar. Now, that's the connection between this is Tathagata, this is the Skanda. We are thinking of two different things. But ultimately the argument is that so long as you think this as two things, you are conceptually, this is problematic. So Nagarjuna says, on the one hand, you can't say Tathagata is in the Skandhas, or Skandhas are in the Tathagata. Or you cannot say Tathagata is away from the Skandhas either. Okay? So Tathagata is not with Skandha. Also you cannot say Tathagata is without Skandha. So, with Skandha and without Skandha, both these things. So Skandhas are not Tathagata. You can't say Skanda equals Tathagata. Then again you are. The whole thing is this stanza has to be understood as, so long as you talk about something existing independently, you cannot really describe this. So Nagarjuna says, Skandhas are not Tathagata. He is not other than Skandhas. The Skandhas are not in Tathagata. He is not in the Skandhas. Tathagata is not with Skandhas. Then who is the Tathagata here? Now, you cannot define who is the Tathagata so long as you talk in this manner. Okay? So in this chapter particularly, you have to be very careful when you read this chapter. Nagarjuna is arguing based on the assumption of the person who accepts Swabhava. So if you accept Swabhava, then what is going to happen is this. Then the number 2, Buddha Skandan Upadaya Yadinasti Swabhavata Swabhavatascha Yonasti Kutaksa Parabhavata. If Tathagata is dependent on Skandhas, then he does not exist by Swabhava. Now, that's why I said that statement doesn't belong to Nagarjuna really. He is arguing from the point of view of his opponent. Okay? So the position is, you have to understand very carefully, it's not Nagarjuna's position. It is the other person's position. So, according to other person, if Tathagata is dependent on Skandhas, if you say that Tathagata exists in dependence of Skandhas, then he does not exist by Swabhava. So, according to the Paravadi, the Tathagata doesn't exist by Swabhava. Now, he says, if someone does not exist by Swabhava, then how can he exist by Parabhava? Now, simply Swabhava, if you say something is Swabhava, naturally Swa has an opposite thing called Para. Every time you say my, I'm saying that something called not my, right? Subject and object. So logically looking, the moment you say Swa, you are assuming that there is something called Para. The moment you say Para, you are assuming something called Swa. It's like, relative concepts. One's own means there is something called other. Also you can say father means child. One cannot be a father without offspring, child. So, like that relatively. So, the moment you say Swa is not there, then you can't say Para. That's the number 2. So, if Tathagata is dependent on Skandhas, then he does not exist by Swabhava. If someone does not exist by Swabhava, then how can he exist by Parabhava? 3. if someone exists by Parabhava, then he should be taken as Anatma. If someone is Anatma, how can he be Tathagata? Now again, this argument is based on the opponent's way of thinking. Pratitya Parabhavam yah, so Anatme Tipapadyate. If someone exists by Parabhava, then he doesn't have Atma. If someone is Anatma, how can he be Tathagata? Now this is we can say Paravadi's argument, other person's argument. If something exists by Anatma, not as Atma, then how can be Tathagata? How can you can talk about the person who is existing? So according to the Paravadi, this argument shows that Paravadi cannot hold into his position because he accepts that somebody independent, then he has to reject the idea that Tathagata or anybody existing as dependently. So Parabhava means dependent. If someone exists by Parabhava, then he should be taken as Anatma. Now this word Anatma here may be problematic. Actually the word Anatma could be mean if someone someone exists by Parabhava, then he should be taken as, you can say, Swabhava. Same thing. Nagarjuna uses here word Anatma. If someone is Anatma, how can he be Tathagata? If someone is taken as Anatma without essence, how can he be Tathagata? Now again, this very cryptic, enigmatic statement, when you look at superficially, it looks like Nagarjuna is talking about Atma. And Nagarjuna seems to be talking about that you need Atma in order to establish Tathagata. So that's what you feel when you look at it. But actually, if you examine closely, it doesn't mean that Nagarjuna is accepting Atma in order to establish Tathagata. But it means that the opponent, the other person accepting Atma in order to establish Tathagata. Because without Swabhava, according to the other person, Tathagata cannot exist. Tathagata has to have Tathagata Bhava. In other words, what makes Tathagata Tathagata and not somebody else is the Tathagata nature. This is very similar to Plato's argument. What makes chair a chair and not a table is chair has, Plato says, chairness. Okay? And what makes table a table, not a chair, is table has a tableness. Same way, what makes a human being and not an animal, human being has humanness. And what an animal is animal and not a human being, animal has animalness. And in animals, there are so many animals. If you take a dog, what dog is dog and not a cow, dog has dogness. Okay? Like that you can go on. Human being has human beingness. Among human beings, what makes you X and not Y, you have Xness. Now this is how usually the Atmavada tradition explains this, okay? So in order for the Tathagata to be Tathagata, you have to say Tathagata has Tathagata-ness. Or Tathagata Bhava. Or Tathagata's Swabhava. All these things mean the same thing. Or you can say Tathagata's Atma. So if you don't have Tathagata's Atma, then you cannot define Tathagata. Now this Atma talk, Atma reference has to be understood carefully. In the Indian tradition, in the Hindu Brahmanic tradition, Atma concept is for that. According to them, I have my Atma, you have your Atma, you have your Atma. So we three are different because we three have three different Atmas. What makes me, and not somebody else is my Atma. What makes you, and not any other person is your Atma. So Atma goes through your body now, another body next birth, another body next birth, but Atma doesn't change. It is the same thing that is called Swabhava. Okay? So when you try to understand this, Tathagata has to have Atma means Tathagata has to have Swabhava. Or Tathagata has to have Tathagata-ness. That makes Tathagata Tathagata and not somebody else. Okay? So, if someone exists by Parabhava, then he should be Anatma. If someone is Anatma, how can he be Tathagata? That's the idea. And then we will move on. Yadi nasti svabhavasya parabhavah katam bhavet. If svabhava is not there, how can there be parabhava? Svabhava parabhava bhyamrute kaksa tathagata. Without svabhava and parabhava, who is he who can be called tathagata? So it has to be either svabhava or parabhava. Now that is instance which shows that, when you have these binary oppositions, either this or that, either swa or para. Now if you have that kind of opposition, then either Tathagata has to be Swabhava or Tathagata has to be Parabhava. So in addition, over and above Swabhava or Parabhava, how can there be Tathagata? Read it again. If there is no Swabhava, how can there be Parabhava? Without Swabhava and Parabhava, who is he who can be called Tathagata? Okay, so that's the idea. And then we will move on. Number 5. Skandhan yadyanupadaya bhavet kaschit tathagata. Saidani mupadadhya dupadaya tato bhavet. If Tathagata is understood to exist independent of skandhas, now he is dependent on them, then he becomes dependent. If Tathagata is understood to exist independent of skandhas, now if you say Tathagata exists independently of skandhas, then now Tathagata depends on skandhas. What has happened to this? What is that? Still it did come. Okay. Thank you. If Tathagata is understood to exist independent skandhas, now he is dependent on them, then he becomes dependent. Now means if you look at the living Tathagata we see through Panchaskandha, through 5 khandhas. So long as Tathagata's 5 khandhas are there, only we see. If you, when you go back and if you look at Digha Nikaya Brahmajala Sutta, at the end of the Brahmajala Sutta, Buddha refers to something like this. Buddha refers, people see the Tathagata so long as his Panchaskandhas are there. When Tathagata is Parinirvana, his Panchaskandha is gone, then people do not see Tathagata anymore. So we can say Tathagata now exists dependent on Panchaskandha, right? We see the Buddha as 5 khandhas, right? We see a human being, so 5 khandhas. So accordingly, Nagarjuna says if Tathagata is understood to exist independent of skandhas, now he is dependent on them. In the present existence, Tathagata is dependent on the 5 khandhas. Then he becomes dependent. Now then of course we have to say that Tathagata is dependent. If we say Tathagata is dependent, according to the Paravadi, according to the opponent, then Tathagata doesn't have his own existence. So in Paravadi's argument, he cannot prove that Tathagata exists. So the argument is, this way of arguing is not Nagarjuna's, according to Paravadi. Next one, on the other hand, there is no Tathagata not not dependent on skandhas. So you cannot talk about Tathagata who doesn't depend on skandhas. Whoever that does not exist independently of skandhas, how can that person be grasped? And then, of course, be grasped means how can that person be understood? Okay, that's a knowledge problem. So if the Tathagata exists, whoever that does not exist independently of skandhas, how can that person be grasped? Whoever that does not exist independently means whoever that exists independently of Tathagata, how can that person be grasped? How can we understand that person? If that person exists independently of skandhas, how can we grasp? Now, the sa upadasyate katham, grasp means can be understood as understood. How can we understand? Oh, how upadasyate katham, how can you grasp in the sense create upadana? I think Professor Kalupahana's translation given to is, he translates this as, how can you generate upadana about Tathagata who doesn't exist dependently on skandhas? Look at it again. There is no Tathagata not dependent on skandhas. That means Tathagata is dependent on skandhas. You remove two negatives and then you get Tathagata is dependent on skandhas. Whoever that does not exist independently of skandhas, that means whoever that does exist dependent on skandhas, how can that person be grasped? When a person dependent on skandhas, how can that person be grasped? Now, if you think that a person exists dependently on skandhas, according to Paravadi's view, how can you then, because then there must be two persons. I mean, like Tathagata separately, Skandha separately. If not, Tathagata exists dependently on skandhas, then how can that person be understood? Because you cannot really, in order to understand, you have to have independent existence according to the Paravadi. So all these arguments you have to understand as referring to that. Now here Nagarjuna talks about, importantly, here Nagarjuna talks about how can you grasp, how can you understood. Now when it comes to exist something, we have two important questions. Like so we say about reality, and then we say knowledge, and then we say communication of knowledge. Now, you know, these are really interesting and important different matters Nagarjuna is talking. Earlier instance, we found that on Kala, Nagarjuna asked, how can we communicate it? Now, Kala is a reality, going back to the last chapter. Now, Kala is a reality, then there's a question, how can you know it? Next question is, even if you know it, how can you communicate it? Now, communicate means actually you can talk about something, but whether you can communicate is a different thing. Do you see the difference? I can be talking here, but I am not communicating anything. I think that is what is happening in this class most of the time. Communicating in the sense, you know, no message is really going into your mind. I am talking, but nothing is communicated, you see. So on the one hand, we are talking about the reality. Can you fix that again? On the one hand, we are talking about the reality. On the other hand, we are talking about how do we know it. And then even if we know, how can we communicate it? Now here the problem is, if you, according to Paravadi, you say you know the Tathagata. If you want to know the Tathagata, you have to know Tathagata. But if Tathagata exists independently of skandhas, what you see is not the Tathagata but the skandhas. Then the question is, how can you know Tathagata? Does that question make sense? You remember my example of Oxford University? Okay, you see all the buildings. Okay, this is the library, this is this and this and this and this. And then finally, having seen everything, if your friend asks, okay, you showed me everything, but where is Oxford University? Now, it's like this. You say, okay, I see Rupa of the Tathagata, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana of the Tathagata. All right, but where is Tathagata? Now, this is the argument here. Now, if the Tathagata depends on the skandhas, then what you see is the skandhas, not the Tathagata. So again, this is not Nagarjuna's argument, this is Paravadi's argument, right? Because he thinks that Tathagata exists independently of, the moment you say that Tathagata exists by its own nature, Tathagata exists as a Atma, Tathagata exists by Swabhava, that means Tathagata has to exist independently of these things, okay? So this is the argument here. Okay, number 5, if Tathagata is understood to exist independent of skandhas, now we discussed that, then he becomes dependent. On the other hand, there is no Tathagata not dependent on skandhas. No Tathagata not dependent on skandha means Tathagata is dependent on skandhas. Whoever that does not exist independently of skandhas, that means whoever that exists dependently on skandhas, how can that person be grasped? That person be understood? Yasya nasti upadaya sa upadasyate katham. Next one. There is no what is grasp or grasping whatsoever. There is not anything that is without upadana. How can there be Tathagata? Na bhavat tyanupadatta upadanancha kinchana. There is not what is grasp and or grasping. Anupadatta and upadana. Nachasti nirupadana. Also there is nothing called without upadana. Katanchana Tathagata. How can there be Tathagata? So upadatta, upadana, nirupadana, all these things don't exist. Then how can there be Tathagata? No, na bhavat tenupadatta. Bhavati anupadatta. There is not what is grasp. Na bhavati bhavatyenupadatta. Na bhavatyenupadatta. Upadanancha kinchana. There is no what is grasp or grasping whatsoever. Nachasti nirupadana. There is not anything that is without upadana either. How can there be Tathagata? Now, the grasping means here basically upadana. It can mean somebody grasping by way of tanha mana ditti, or somebody's understanding. So grasp can be in two different ways. So there is no what is na bhavati anupadattan. Upadanancha kinchana. There is no that is not upadatta. Anupadatta means not grasp. Upadana. And also nachasti nirupadanam, non-upadana, without upadana. Katanchana Tathagata. If all these things don't exist, then how can there be Tathagata? Now, in this stanza, Nagarjuna is using the concept of upadana, upadatta, and then Tathagata. Now, if you talk about the Tathagata, Tathagata must be able to grasp, understood, realized by certain features, or not realized by certain features. Or Tathagata can be one who is realized by others, so on. Na upadatta, upadana, nirupadana. Katanchana Tathagata. If all these things don't exist, then how can there be Tathagata. Professor Kalupana's translation is, there is no sphere of non-grasping, nor is there something as grasping. Na bhavati anupadanam. There is no what is, actually in my translation, there is no what is grasp is wrong. It has to be corrected as, there is no what is not grasp. Okay? Na bhavati anupadattan. Anupadatta means past participle, not grasp. Upadanancha kinchana. No is there anything grasping, upadana. Nachasti nirupadanah. Neither is there someone who is without grasping. Nirupadanah. Nachasti nirupadanah. Katanchana tathagata. Then how can there be a tathagata? Nachasti nirupadanah. So you can see what it means is, either you cannot understand Tathagata as Anupadatta, not grasp, or grasping, or one who does not grasp. So there are three different concepts here. Anupadattang means as what is not grasped. Anupadatta. Okay? So Anupa Datta. Then Upadana means grasping. Then we have Nirupadana. Now it refers to one who is without grasping. Bhavati nirupadanam. Bhavati anupadattam. Anupadatta. Upadanancha kinchana. Nachasti nirupadanah. Nirupadanah. Na upadanah. That means refers to a person. There is also no such person called person without upadana. Now why he is rejecting this concept of nirupadana? I mean, we normally say that Buddha is nirupadana. Buddha doesn't have upadana. Why Nagarjuna says no nirupadana? Again, we have to understand this as nirupadana means, if you take Tathagata as an independent person, Tathagata as an independent person, as nirupadana doesn't exist. But Tathagata as a dependent person, pratitya samutpanna, you can understand. But the moment you say Tathagata is by his own nature, then you can say that no person called Nirupadana. So, all these things, in a way look like very challenging. How can it be? Buddha is Nirupadana. That's our first reaction. Actually, Nagarjuna's the style, we have to understand. Nagarjuna puts you in a situation where you are really tense. Then only you can see the philosophical significance of that. Otherwise, you are not bothered. You are not challenged. Now in this chapter, we also see towards the end, Nagarjuna is really challenging you to see. Nagarjuna says, there is no Nirupadana Buddha. How can that be? Then, you have to find a way to understand it, okay? So, otherwise, you are not thinking about it. You're just taking it for granted. So, this style of Nagarjuna has to be understood carefully. So, anything that is without upadana, how can there be Tathagata? Even when examined in 5 manners, it means 5 aggregates, if there is no Tathagata as identical with or different from skandhas, how can such a Tathagata be known by upadana? So, you look at 5 skandhas, panchadha, Tattvanyattvena yo nasti mrigyamanascha panchadha. Panchadha means 5 manners. 5 manners means by way of rupa, vedana, sanya, sankhara, vijnana. 5 skandhas. And then you can't see Tathagata as identical or different from skandhas. How can such a Tathagata be known by Upadana? Nagarjuna asks, how can such a Tathagata be Upadana katam sakatam prajñāpyeta Tathagatam? Prajñāpyeti. Prajñāpyeti means be known. Prajñāpyeti. Actually again it can be translated as be communicated. Prajñāpyeti. Made known through grasping. Made known means how can you make known that person? Actually that means how can you communicate? How can you make any other person know him? So upadanena chakatam prajñapyeta tathagatam. So if Tathagata doesn't exist dependently or independently of 5 skandhas, how can such a Tathagata be known by Upadana? Be known, actually in my translation, has to be corrected as made known. How can such Tathagata be made known? That means you communicate to others. Number 9. Yadapi the Upadanam tatsabha Van navidyate. Svabhavatascha yang nasti kutascha parabhavata. If this upadana does not exist as svabhava, how can that which does not exist by svabhava exist by parabhava? Now the same argument earlier we saw is applied to upadana. If this upadana does not exist as svabhava, how can that which does not exist by svabhava exist by parabhava? Evang shunyam upadana mupadatacha sarvasha. Prajñapyetu shunyena katah shunyam tathagata. That's beautiful. Evang shunyam upadanam. Both upadana and upadata are shunya, sarvasha, in every manner. In this manner, grasping and the grasper. Upadana means grasping. Upadata means one who grasps. Are empty in all manners. How can Tathagata, who is empty, be known by what is empty? Now the interesting thing is, Tathagata is empty of Svabhava. And also, if you want to know by Tathagata Panchaskandha or Upadana, then those things are also empty. Then Nagarjuna asks, how can you know the Tathagata who is empty by empty things? That can be a question to the Paravadi again, the other person. Tathagata is empty, Panchaskandha is empty, Upadana is empty. How can you know something empty by empty means? Actually, to this question, Nagarjuna answers in the chapter 24. We will read Nagarjuna's answer there. But this is very interesting. So, prajñapyate tu shunyena katam shunya tathagata. Tathagata is shunya, Panchaskandha and Upadana are shunya. Then how can you know Tathagata who is shunya by something shunya? Panchaskandha and Upadana are taken together here because ultimately it is Pancha Upadana Skandha that is cause of suffering, right? So you take Panchaskandha plus Upadana. 11. One should not say it is empty. It could be even not empty, both or neither. These are said merely for the purpose of communication. Now when it comes to empty, shunya can have 4 positions. Shunya, ashunya, both shunya and ashunya, neither shunya, no ashunya. So those are the Chatushkoti regarding shunya. Nagarjuna says, all these things are prajñapyartantu katyate. These are said merely for the purpose of communication. Now again Nagarjuna, what does Nagarjuna try to say that? Now here Nagarjuna says empty. And then empty can has 4 positions: shunya, ashunya, both, neither. Now, the problem is, when Nagarjuna is talking about shunya, somebody can take shunya as existing by Swabhava. Okay? I mean, then you can take shunya as existing by Swabhava. Nagarjuna says, no. You can talk about shunya, ashunya, both, neither, just for the sake of communication. There is nothing really essence there. Because what can happen is, you say everything is shunya, ultimately you take shunya to be by existing by Swabhava. Then it becomes even more problematic. Now that is why Nagarjuna says, all these are prajnapyartam tu katyate, all these are said for communication. Shasvata shasvatadya kuta shante chatushtayam. Antananta pichapyat kuta shante chatushtayam. How can there be 4 positions such as eternal? Again, what are the 4 positions? Eternal, non-eternal, both, neither. To the Blessed One. How can there be the 4 positions such as finite, infinite, etc. to the Blessed One? Shanta, Shanti, Shasvata, Ashasvatadya, Kutak Shante Chatushtayam. Antananta Pichapyatra, Kutak Shante Chatushtayam. That, in other words, Shanta, Shante means Shanti. It could be referring to either Nirvana or to the Buddha. Shanti means bliss, peacefulness. So the peaceful person or peaceful position, or blissful position or blissful person. Now Nagarjuna asks, how can you talk about finite, infinite, both, neither about the Buddha? Antananta. How can you talk about Shasvata, Ashasvata, both or neither about the Buddha? That in other words, you cannot really articulate these things. You cannot apply these things to the Buddha. How can there be 4 positions such as eternal, etc. to the Blessed One? So now this Shasvata, Ashasvata, Anta, Ananta, these were the Avyakruta questions by the Buddha, right? You remember Avyakruta questions, 10 questions. In the 10 questions, Shasvata, Ashasvata. But here you have not 2, all 4. Shasvata, Ashasvata, both Shasvata and Ashasvata, neither Shasvata nor Ashasvata. Same thing, Antavaloko, Anantavaloko. However, here in the Mahayana literature, they develop other 2 also. Antavacha, Anantavacha loko, Neva Antava, Ne Anantava loko. So, all 4 positions. Actually, Buddha rejected all these 4 positions, right? And the same manner, Nagarjuna is rejecting these 4 positions. How can you apply these things to the Buddha? Yena graho grahitastu ghano nastiti tatagata. Nastiti sa vikalpayan nivrutasyapi kalpayet. Whosoever assuming the distinction on grasper and grasp. Graho grahita. Graho means grasper. Grahita means past participle, what is grasp. Takes Tathagata either to exist or to not exist in solid form. That person creates thoughts, Vikalpayan, even about the Tathagata who has attained Parinirvana. Nivrutasya apikalpayet. Vikalpayan, Nivrutasya apikalpayet. Nivruta means the person, the Tathagata who has attained Parinirvana. Now, person who thinks in terms of grasper and what is grasp, that means subject and object. Grasper means one who understands. Grasp means what is understood. So in simple language you say grasper and grasp. What is grasp means subject and object. Grasper, subject. What is grasp? Object. Now, if you think in these terms, yeda graho grahitastu, And then if you think that Tathagata exists in a solid form, but Tathagata has attained parinirvana, Tathagata is no more. If you think in these terms, then you are thinking, kalpayet. Kalpana means you create thoughts. One who thinks in that manner, he is creating unnecessary thoughts about the existence or non-existence of the Buddha. So the grasp means general thing, whatever you take as subject and object. That means dichotomy. You dichotomize, you divide into two, and then subject exists without object, object exists without subject. Correct understanding, there is no subject without object, there is no object without subject. But that is the correct understanding. But the Svabhava understanding is grasper is different from grasp, grasp is different from grasper. So if you understand in that manner, then what you do is, even you are thinking about unnecessary things about the Tathagata who has attained parinirvana. Nivruta means stopped. That means attained parinirvana. Nasti iti vikalpayan. Kalpana, vikalpana. Kalpana means actually klup. The root is klup, to create by mind, kalpana. Kalpana means creation by mind. Next one, sabhavatascha shunyasmin chintanaivo upapadyate. Param nirodhat bhavati buddho na bhavati va. Now directly it is said that when the Tathagata is empty of sabhava, it is not proper to think about him as existing or non-existing after cessation. Now actually what is here refers to is the four positions. Hoti Tathagato parammarana, nahoti Tathagato parammarana, hoti cha, nahoti cha, Tathagato parammarana, neva hoti, na nahoti. So these four positions. Nagarjuna says, when the Tathagata is not there as Svabhava, how can you think about these four positions? Svabhavatascha shunyasmi, chintanaivo padyate, param nirodhat bhavati buddho va na bhavati va. Whether Tathagata exists after nirvana or not is not proper. Now, next two stanzas are the conclusion of the chapter. It's very interesting. Whoever creates prapancha on the Tathagata, who is beyond prapancha and who is unshakable, those people who are hit by prapancha do not see Tathagata. Prapanchayanti ye buddham prapanchatitam avyayam. Te prapancha hatah sarve na pashyanti Tathagatam. Those who create prapancha on the Buddha who has gone beyond prapancha. What is prapancha? Basically, according to commentary, prapancha means tanha mana ditti, right? So whoever who creates tanha mana ditti about the Buddha, te prapancha hatah sarve. Prapancha hatah. They are destroyed by prapancha. Third line. They are destroyed by prapancha. Te prapancha hatah sarve na pashyanti Tathagatam. They will never see the Buddha. Never see the Buddha means they will never understand the Buddha. So read that carefully again. Prapanchayanti ye buddham prapanchatitam avyayam. Buddham adjectives are prapanchatitam avyayam. Buddha is prapanchatita and also Buddha is avyaya. So whoever create prapancha about Buddha, who is beyond prapancha and unshakable, te prapancha hatah sarve na pashyanti Tathagatam. And then look at the final conclusion. Tathagato yatsabhava tatsabhavam midam jagat. Tathagato nissabhavo nissabhavam midam jagat. Whatever is the nature or sabhava of the Tathagata, this world is of that nature. Tathagata is without sabhava, the world is without sabhava. Tathagato nissabhavo nissabhavam midam jagat. Now you know that's a very interesting statement. On the one hand, Nagarjuna says first two lines, Tathagata and world has the same nature. Tathagata and the Tathagata and the world has same nature. Or this is something like saying Tathagata equals world. Now, if you look at first two lines, it means Tathagato yat svabhava, tat svabhavam idam jagat. Whatever the svabhava of the Tathagata, the world has that svabhava. Or Tathagata and Buddha are equal. Now again, this has to be understood as Nagarjuna's way of saying. So when you listen to that, you get mad. How can Tathagata and the world be the same? World is full of dirt, Tathagata is pure. So how can the world and the Tathagata have the same nature? So, the first, you get very, upset in your mind. How can this be? What is he saying? Is Nagarjuna off mind or something? How can he say that Tathagata and the world are the same? So, this is a very, important style we have to understand in Nagarjuna. And then the next one he says, Tathagato nisvabhava. The Tathagata doesn't have svabhava. Nisvabhava vidam jagat. World also doesn't have svabhava. So when he says Tathagata and Buddha has same nature, what it means is Tathagata and world has the same nisvabhava nature, not having svabhava. So Tathagata and Buddha are identical, or Tathagata and Tathagata and world are identical. How? Because Tathagata doesn't have svabhava, world also doesn't have svabhava. The Nagarjuna want to emphasize the point that ultimately Buddha doesn't have svabhava, world doesn't have svabhava. And then later we come across another Nagarjuna's very famous statement, na nirvanasya sansarat kinchidasti visheshanam. There is nothing that distinguishes sansara from nirvana and nirvana from sansara. Again, the same issue. How can you say sansara and nirvana are the same? You really have a question. But then Nagarjuna answers that. Nagarjuna makes a very paradoxical statement. Tathagato yat svabhava tat svabhavang idam jagat. But then he solved the paradox. Tathagato nisvabhavang idam jagat. So actually, it's something like this. You can say Buddha and the dog are similar. So you get so upset. How can that be? Buddha and dog are similar. Nagarjuna can say, dog has no svabhava, Buddha has no svabhava. So in that sense, both are similar. So something like that. Because the first statement can be very, what called blasphemous. Like, the really disrespecting the Buddha. How can Buddha and the dog be alike? But then in one sense, both Buddha and the dog are no svabhava, nisvabhava. So the same thing here. Nagarjuna says, the Tathagata and the world are of same nature. Tathagata is nisvabhava, the world is nisvabhava. So do you get his point? So when we read Nagarjuna, we can see that Nagarjuna is making this kind of statements. So, but if you look at carefully, you can see that first two lines, Nagarjuna says, Tathagato yat svabhava, tat svabhavam idam jagat. Whatever is the nature of the Tathagata, this world is of that nature. Both Tathagata and world share the same nature. What is the same nature? Not having the same nature. That's in a way, linguistic term. I say, you ask, what are you doing? I say, I am doing nothing. Does that mean that I am doing something called nothing? I say I am doing nothing. But linguistically, I am doing something. But what I am doing is nothing. Similar thing. Tathagata has svabhava. What is the svabhava? Nisvabhava. So Tathagata's svabhava is that he doesn't have svabhava. Okay? Tathagata's svabhava is that he doesn't have svabhava. So actually these last two stanzas summarize Nagarjuna's entire analysis. Again, prapanchanti ye buddham prapanchatitam avyayam. Te prapancha hata sarvena pashyanti tathagatam. Whoever created Prapancha on the Tathagata, who is beyond Prapancha and who is unshakable, those people who are hit by the Prapancha, they are hit by the Prapancha, they are destroyed by the Prapancha, do not see the Tathagata. That means so long as you make Prapancha, like whether Tathagata is eternal or not, or both or neither, whether Tathagata is finite, infinite, both or neither, those are Prapanchas, what we mentioned earlier. Now whoever makes those Prapanchas, they will never understand the Buddha. Whether Buddha exists in this life or afterlife or... Now that is why Buddha did not answer these questions for Vyakruta question. And then the last one, Tathagato yat svabhava, tat svabhavam idam jagat. So the Tathagata has whatever svabhava, this world also has that svabhava. Tathagato nissvabhavo, Tathagata is nissvabhava, nissvabhavam idam jagat. This world is nissvabhava. Okay, I think we went through this hurriedly, but I think the basic argument is clear. Basic idea is that usually when we talk about Tathagata, the Buddha, how are we going to see the Buddha? Buddha says that basically people will see me so long as my Panchaskandha is here. In the Digha Nikaya Brahmajala Sutta you can see that. Buddha says, my Panchaskandha is gone, people will not see me anymore. So usually we understand the Buddha by Panchaskandha, Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana. But is that Buddha?
Yes.
Yes or no?
Buddha appear in human beings. Human beings exist in five panchakhandas. So we have to depend on five panchakhanda. But he had absolutely eradicated the attachment on five khandas. If Buddha appear Brahma Loka or Deva Loka, in Brahma Loka, how can we say Buddha depend on five khandas? Maybe four or maybe one. I think why don't understand Nagarjuna Astri scholar visit the absence of the Tinavada of Buddha was
Try to, it's good to understand, but here we have to see that Nagarjuna is talking about Buddha in the world as we see. Okay. Now we cannot deny that Buddha exists based on the Panchaskandha, right? But if he goes to Brahma world or something, whether Buddha can go to with Panchaskandha Brahma world, that's a different thing. But Buddha was not born as the Buddha in the Brahma world, right? Buddha was born in this world. So Buddha has Panchaskandha. Now the point is, can you really, if you take Panchaskandha independently, then the question arises whether Buddha is Panchaskandha or not. But Reverend, so long as you take the Panchaskandha and personality dependently arisen, this argument actually not only to the Buddha. Forget about the Buddha, what about us? Is Asanga Tilakaratna Panchaskandha or Asanga Tilakaratna different from Panchaskandha? Now if you believe that, we exist in Swabhava, then Asanga Tilakaratna has to exist as Swabhava, Panchaskandha has to exist Swabhava. So two different things. This is the problem. But so long as you understand Asanga Tilakaratna is another name for this combination of Panchaskandha. So Panchaskandha is not in this context, they are without Asanga Tilakaratna, and Asanga Tilakaratna will not be their Panchaskandha. That's a dependently arisen thing. So this is the point here. Actually the argument is not only for the Buddha. Argument can be applicable to any person. How do you exist? Are you simply Panchaskandha or not? What about you? All of us have Panchaskandhas, right? But then my Panchaskandha is different because my Vijnana, Namarupa, the Sanya, Vijnana, all these things and accumulated things, Sankhara, are different. So my Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara different from your Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana. But you also have Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana, I also have same thing. But my Panchaskandha is different. So am I, how are we going to define? Can I be defined with Panchaskandha or without Panchaskandha? So if you take Swabhava as Swabhava, then of course this whole chapter is trying to show that actually. if you try to explain the Buddha, I mean, how do you see the Buddha? What you see is Buddha's Panchaskandha. But if the Buddha is Panchaskandha, no. But on the other hand, is the Buddha without Panchaskandha? No. Now when the Buddha says in the Brahmajala Sutta, people will see me only so long as my Panchaskandha is here. When my Panchaskandha is destroyed, people will not see me. Does that mean that when the Buddha's Panchaskandha is destroyed, he is there without Panchaskandha? Now anybody can ask that question, because Buddha says that people see me only till they see my Panchaskandha. Okay? But then you can ask a question. Okay, Buddha attains parinirvana. Now Buddha's Panchaskandha are no more. Then does the Buddha exist somewhere without Panchaskandha? No, because Panchaskandha and Buddha are interdependent. When the Panchaskandhas are gone, Buddha is gone too. You can't say that, although, Buddha's expression, when Buddha says, people see me till my Panchaskandha is here, then naturally we will think, okay, when the Panchaskandha is gone, Buddha must be in some other form. Actually not, because Panchaskandha has to exist dependent on the Buddha, Buddha has to exist dependent on the Panchaskandha. So when the Panchaskandha is gone, Buddha is gone too, right? That is because both are dependent. Both don't have svabhava. Both are empty. So this is Nagarjuna's philosophy, okay? So Reverend, it is not really different, according to my interpretation, from what discourses and the early Buddhism says, really. But you have to see it properly. But anyhow, I am not asking you to accept my interpretation, but you are free to read Nagarjuna and make your own interpretation, right? I am giving one interpretation. Actually, you can reject it. You can be different from that. That's very good. No problem at all. No, because that is the whole thing. Because I read it in the manner, that I can see that he says something exactly according to the basic philosophy of the Buddha. But you can always argue, because, that's why at the very beginning of this course, I said the interpretation of Nagarjuna is a very important matter. How do we interpret Nagarjuna? How do we understand Nagarjuna? As I said, there are 7, 8 English translations of Nagarjuna. That means people have understood Nagarjuna in so many different ways. So what you can do is, one day you will be able to write another translation of Nagarjuna according to Burmese Buddhist tradition or Theravada Buddhist tradition. Now, it's open. I'm not really joking. What I'm saying is, it is open for interpretation. Okay. So, but how I understand, now when Nagarjuna says, Tathagato yat svabhava, tat svabhavang idam jagat, world and Tathagata are same. But what he says is actually what he means by that is Tathagato nisvabhava. So by being anatma, in other words, world and the Buddha are same. Both Buddha is anatma and the world is anatma. So in that sense, we can say world and the Buddha are the same. But of course, that doesn't mean that we say that world and the Buddha are the same in every manner. No, we are not saying that. World and Buddha is not same every manner, but in this fundamental anatma manner. Now when the Dhamma says, Sabbe sankhara dukkha, Sabbe sankhara anicca, Sabbe sankhara dukkha, but Sabbe dhamma anatta. Now when you say Sabbe dhamma anatta, why Sabbe dhamma? Why not Sabbe sankhara? Sabbe sankhara anicca, Sabbe sankhara dukkha, but Sabbe dhamma anatta. Why? Pardon me? Dhamma includes Nibbana. Pretty simple. Dhamma includes Nirvana. So in that sense, you can say Nirvana is equal to Loka. Because Nirvana is Anatma, Loka is also Anatma. So you see, you have to understand in that perspective. From the Anatma point of view, everything is Anatma. Okay? But comparison is only that. You can't compare everything. So you can say Buddha and the dog are the same because both are anatma. But of course, comparison is only that. We don't go anything else. So Buddha and the chair are the same because both are anatma. We can make all kinds of statements because what we mean is within that context, okay. Same thing Nagarjuna is doing. Tathagato yatsabhava tatsabhavam idam jagat. Tathagato nissabhava. Tathagata is anatma. Nissabhavam idam jagat. This world is anatma. Yes, ma'am.
The advantage, the use of word Tathagata
Mm-hmm.
to eliminate concept of Svabhava.
Correct, correct.
Because people can see when in the Tathagata, no Svabhava, no
Yeah.
one accept easily. And using this concept, we're trying to cancel, we're trying to eliminate the concept of Svabhava to the world.
Yeah, actually the crux of the matter is that we don't see him using all the time Atma concept, but the whole the Svabhava concept. So that is why I said, when you understand one chapter of Nagarjuna very correctly, you can understand the entire book. Because the actually argument is the same. The argument rotates around only one thing. So in a way you can say only one message is Nagarjuna giving in here. Just to reject the concept of Svabhava. In order to reject it, Nagarjuna applies into all the concept. In this chapter, he applies into the concept of Tathagata. So that is what happened. And in the Nirvana chapter, which we'll be reading next, he is applying that to Nirvana. So we can see how he is applying it to Nirvana. Okay. Okay, we can wind up for this morning, but of course you are welcome to bring any questions when you go through it again. If you have any other questions in understanding, we can discuss again. So we will meet around 2 o'clock to, we have this material on Sarvastivada, so we will carefully read that because you wanted to know more about Sarvastivada, and also it will help us to understand Nagarjuna discussion also. So thank you very much.